Okey, Dr. Asrul. Doktor boleh mula dulu kot. Ya, Doktor, sekejap. Dalam 10 second lagi, kita countdown. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, my name is Dr. Farhan bin Ariffin. I'm the moderator for the third parallel session for today. And for this session, everyone is given 10 and about 12 minutes each for their presentation, and then we will have Q&A at the end of this session. So the theme for this session is about politics. So we get here about 3 papers all about. First from Dr. Muhammad Hasrul Zakaria, Britain Geopolitical. Then Mr. Sakau, Kausu Gassama, The Politics of Conflicts. And then Ahmad Zulkifli Muhammad about the political school of thought of the Ikhwan Muslimin leadership. Okay, so that's the three presenter for today's. So first of all, I would like to ask the first presenter to introduce himself, Dr. Muhammad Hasrul Zakaria, and then continue with the presentation of his paper about Britain geopolitical consideration in the Middle East during the 6-day Arab-Israeli War of 1967, reassessment. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the first presenter.
All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to everyone. I hope that you can hear my voice, and I wish that moderator will remind me if I exceeded the time frame. Okay. Thank you again to moderator and then panelists as well as the members of the floor. All right. My name is Mohd Hasrul, but known as Dr. Hasrul. I'm from History program at the School of Humanities, University of Science Malaysia in Penang. To be clear with you and the audience that I'm a historian. Okay, I'm a historian. So my analysis mostly based on historical methodology. Okay, so it is not some people they may get confused with maybe theoretical framework or approaches from maybe international study discipline. But in my case, I would like to make it clear from the beginning that I'm a historian. Then my major or my interest is in international history, especially in the case of the British foreign policy in the Middle East. Okay, so my papers today is the title is Britain Geopolitical Consideration in the Middle East during the 6-day Arab-Israel War of 1967. A reassessment. So reassessment here is from historical interpretation. This study actually is reassessing the geopolitical considerations of the British government in the 6 days of the Arab-Israel War of 1967, or known as June War. All right, June War 1967. There were at least 4 major wars in the Arab-Israel conflict. It started with the independent wars of 1948, and then the Suez Crisis, and then the 6-day wars, and then after that 1973, the Yom Kippur or the October War, and then after that from 1978-1979, there was the first peace Accord, comprehensive peace accord, known as Camp David Accord, orchestrated by President Jimmy Carter from the state, and Dr. Henry Kissinger, he was the Secretary of State. All right, so my focus here in 1967, one of the reason why I choose 1967 because of the war is the impact of the war is still relevant, is still significant until today. Yeah? For example, in the issues of Baitul Maqdis or Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, which been occupied by the Israelis since the war in 1967, and then other area occupied by Israel, such as uh, Gaza now is they claim is controlled, but for me personally, I can say it is not controlled. It is occupied by the Israelis, and then Golan High. So all these issues remain until today, and that's why it triggered me to analyze and to study this war because of it's still relevant until today. Okay, for my people, I argue, right, that the British, even though in the public, in international forum, in the UN, for instance, they continuously claim that whatever they do, whatever policy implemented by them, it is based on the equilibrium, unbiased, neutral attitude. This is the policy that they've been proclaimed, all the time, especially when they table the important resolution which ended the conflict, the resolution 242. And for this study, I argue that although Britain did not directly involve in the war like what they did in Suez Crisis, Suez Crisis in 1956. We knew the three musketeers, Britain and then France and then the Israel. But in 1967, they did not involve directly, especially by sending military or force to the battlefield, but indirectly, Britain contributed and involved actively during the war. Okay, so that is my study all about, and I argue that. The British government always proclaimed equilibrium, as I mentioned just now. They did not take any side, neither supported the Israel nor supported the Arabs. But actually, from my analysis, it shows that British government uh, play a biased approach and actions which they actually supported the Israelis. Okay, so that's the stand or the main argument. And secondly, they also proclaim that, especially when they table and they construct the item in Resolution 242, they continually claim that this article, the aim of this article or the intention of tabling this article 100% totally was based on the principle to promote peace, lasting peace and comprehensive peace in the Middle East conflict. So that's what they say and they proclaim everywhere, in the public, in the parliament, in the United Nations by their uh, representative at that time was Lord Caradon. And please bear in mind, during this event, Britain was ruled by the Labour parties. The Prime Minister was Mr. Harold Wilson. All right. But for me, when I analyze, since that, as I said earlier, that I am a historian, so I analyze all these documents, okay, from the archival sources, and most of these documents, I can say almost 90%. a declassified document which I found in London in the National Archive in UK. So from my study and from my analysis, the memo, the minute, the telegrams, and everything, it shows that one of the major considerations of the British government at that time, it was not purely to promote a lasting peace, but one of the major factor was the geopolitical consideration. All right, so that is the essence, the main idea of my paper. I wish that this paper hopefully will be published soon, and we can read in detail. I'm not going to explain in detail all the example. I just pick and highlight a certain important point here. All right. So during the war, what were the geopolitical factor which influenced and shaped the British policy and action? So one of the item, if I can say item. Sorry, I don't prepare this PowerPoint or just based on my handwriting notes. One of the point under geopolitical factor, it is about the way how or the strategy for the British to prevent or to curb Soviet influence and the Arab nationalist threat. So this is one of the most critical threat during the conflict toward British geopolitical interest in the region, especially came from President Nasser, Jamal Abdel Nasser. I hope that you are familiar with this name. President Jamal Abdel Nasser of the UAR. At that time, UAR comprised Egypt and Syria and Syria. Uh, uh, but I would like to point here as well. Even though British never accused that Egypt is one of the communist country, but it is unnecessary for the British. From the document that I read, it is unnecessary for them to categorize which country is communist, which country is non-communist, etc. Okay, but they just look into uh, the government or the country who against the British interest. If we relate with this current issue, I would like to. It is not in the text actually. I would like to relate with the current or contemporary issue in Malaysia. For example, recently, it's very controversial when people started to talk, and some of them they just get confused between the the left nationalists, leftist nationalists, or radical nationalists with the communists. Some of my colleagues even argue that they are not communists. So if we compare in the case of UAR or the case in 1967, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Nasser, President Nasser, and most of these Arab countries, they were not communist country, and they were not communist either. All right,
Yeah.
but for the British and also for the Soviet, they don't care. In fact, based on what Lenin say, I quoted here, we are going to support, regardless what is your ideology. Either you are nationalist, you are religious, or you are whatever you are. I mean, your background or your ideology, we are going to support you as long as you are in our team. To dethrone or to combat against the Western powers. Okay, so this is what they've been doing all over the world, including, as I mentioned just now, in Malaya at that time. So although we know that these nationalists like Jamal Abdel Nasser in the case of the Middle East, or in here in Malaysia, for example, Ahmad Bustamam, or Burhanuddin Al-Helmi, all these big figures.
Figure.
And the people say, oh, they are not communists. Yes, of course, they are not communists, but they've been supported by the communists. So this is the strategy. It's the same like Jamal Abdul Nasir. They are not communists. And if you read my papers, you can see I listed here, uh, few countries, like Iraq, Algeria, and then Syria. So all these countries at that time, they were not communist. They're not. Their prime minister or the president are not communist either. huh, But they've been supported by the Soviet. And for the British, the collapse of the Arab country, who are what they categorize as a liberal country, or non-revolutionary country, like Saudi Arabia and Jordan, to this radical country or a revolutionary country supported by the Soviet, like Iraq, like Egypt, like Algeria, and Syria, means that they are going, to be expelled by the Soviet in the region. Okay, so that's the reason why they put so much effort to curb the influence of the nationalists, because they want to prevent the influence of the Soviet from continuously penetrating into the region. So I've listed here the economy, interest. For example, in Egypt, in Syria, in Algeria, where they receive a lot of assistance from the Soviet. For example, in UAR or in Egypt and Syria, they receive more than 145 millions of military and commercial assistance from the Soviet at that time. And they are not, actually, they were not communist country, and they were not also communist leader. So you can compare what happened in 1967 in the Arab country or in the Middle East with what exactly happened in Malaya. You familiar recently with what they call it, uh, Form 4, right? Form 4 syllabus, history syllabus,
Yes.
right? So they keep, some of us keep continuing to say, oh, they are not communist. Of course, they are not communists. So we cannot see it from the domestic perspective only. We have to look and interpret and analyze the situation or the scenario also from the global perspective or international perspective. All right, that's the first one. Give me a few more minutes. Sorry.
Okay,
And
okay.
then uh, uh, the second part of geopolitical consideration by the British, it was based on the military position. Military position, and I listed all the document here. What the British Prime Minister stated about the importance of Middle East as a military strategic position for Britain. And we have to know, for example, in 1967 there were RAF station, and then there was a headquarters of the British force, and then the administrative center for the land force in a few places like in Muharram, in Juffa, in Sulmania, in Hamala camp. So British try to ensure that they can preserve all these places in order to prevent the influence of the nationalists as well as the Soviet in the context of military bases. So I'm not going to uh, um, explain in detail. Just a few examples as mentioned just now. And the third part of the geopolitical strategy, geopolitical consideration, is the economic strategy. The economic strategy, and it is suffice to mention here. Okay, until 1970, 40% of the British sources of energy, especially for the industry, depended on oil, and this oil came from the Middle East. All right, and when we talk about the strategic and geopolitical consideration, we have to remember when I presented some of this idea abroad, and they said, well, Britain also imported oil from America, from Russia, as well as from Latin America. But the difference was in in the Middle East, the oil from the Middle East is much cheaper. It's much
Yes.
cheaper, and then it's more quality. It is much cheaper, it's more quality, and it is easier to control. The Middle East government,
Yes.
compared to, for example, if they want to control the Soviet, or if they want to control the United States, for example. And then I also argue with them. I said, well, they said Britain also received, for example, gas, right, from the North. In the 1967, this gas and oil field in the North Sea was not been discovered yet. All right, so everything was based, I can see, as I mentioned just now, uh, more than
Yes.
40%, and 60 the energy and 60% from the Arab country. All right. So the most important thing in this oil issues or economic issues is the route. The strategic route in the context of geopolitical analysis is the strategic route from the Middle East through the Red Sea, through Suez Canal, through uh, you know uh, all these Aqaba, Gulf of Aqaba, and then the other side is Mediterranean Sea. It's very easy for the to Britain as well as to Europe to access to oil sources. So that is the third analysis which I have explained in my paper. So the detail maybe you can read very soon. For example, the cost that has been paid by the British government when they've been prevented to go to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal during the war. They have to go through Cape Town, and then at the same time they have to hire more and bigger, tanker ship to carry all the oil, and the consequence. The economic problem and then the oil prices, not just in UK but all over Europe, all over, and then continue with the embargo after the war. So all these things uh, shaped the British policy, and subsequently, the British, based on all these concerns, subsequently the British construct their actions and their policy towards the war. So it is not, if I can say, it's incorrect to say that everything was purely based on the aim and the objective for lasting justice and all these reforms. Right? Everything was based on the geopolitical consideration, and I listed just now in brief. I'm sorry, I cannot deliver every single detail. You can find out in my paper soon. Every single thing. Uh, Based on the geopolitical consideration. Okay, and I still remember when I presented not this paper but a part of this paper in Leicester, I think 2 years ago, when I gave all the details and the document. One of the professor at Leicester University, they simply asked me, so what do you expect? There's nothing free in this world. Okay? Of course, this there's something agenda for the sake of the British interest. Okay, but of course, our job, our task, especially in this case, is historian, is to unveil. All right, and to reveal whatever facts and data and document declassified from the archive. All right, so maybe I should stop here. I think more than 10 minutes. I'm very sorry, Mr. Moderator. All right, so I wish that the idea, the most important thing, the main idea of my paper has been delivered well. All right, thank you very much again, Mr. Moderator, panelists, and members of the call. Assalamualaikum. Thank you.
Okay. Waalaikumsalam. Thanks to Dr. Muhammad Hasrul Zakaria, the historian, historian from USM, University of Science of Malaysia. And now I would like to invite the second presenter is Mr. Sakau Kausu Gassama.
Can I just stop for a while my cam, but I still follow the session. Is that okay? Is that okay?
Okay.
Can
Ya,
I
tak.
just okay?
Okay, okay.
But I'm still in the room. Okay.
Okay, 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 okay. Okay.
Uh,
Then ada Mr. Ahmad. Yeah, I'm still waiting for the second and third presenter to be joining us today. So since uh, Mr. Gassama is about the politics of conflicts, but here I can see, so it's not here. And the third presenter is Dr. Ahmad Zulkifli, the political top of Ikhwanul Muslimin. Okay, so he's not here as well. Okay, so without wasting any time, so Dr. Hasrul,
yes, yes, yes.
so I have so the second one and the third one did not
Are they come?
attend this,
Are they coming or
not
I mean,
not,
is
not
they are
coming.
on the way? They are not coming.
Ada orang coming in the room, in this room. Stream, yeah. Just only you.
Oh, all right. Okay, okay.
Okay. Okay.
I,
So
I,
so
I thought that they are on the way.
uh, I don't know, but when I WhatsApp, so they don't reply.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Okay, never mind, doctor. Because
Mm.
about your presentation, written geopolitical consideration. So this is very interesting. Uh, like the first one, supported by the communist uh, nation. The second one, military document atau or military headquarters, and the third one, economic strategy. The 40 of energy from Middle East, 16 oil from Middle East. So I have a question for you, Doctor.
Yes,
Okay,
please. Thank you.
as the end of our discussion.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask about uh, the the Britain of the or the Western uh, Western consideration about Saddam Hussein. Wow, what's really trigger the Western or the Britain uh,
Mm.
to to occupy Iraq or Saddam Hussein era, because when we relate about Arab and Israel war ni, so we notice the figure in this war, Arab and Israel, is Saddam Hussein.
Mm.
And the phenomenon in war of of Arab Israeli war in 1967. So uh, we can say that Saddam Hussein is the proxy of Western
Mm.
in the first. But what will happen in the back uh,
Okay.
until the until the fall of Saddam Hussein? Okay, that's my question for you.
Okay. Okay. We have to understand, all right. First of all, we have to understand the basic policy of these Western powers, either Britain or the United States or European Union. All right. Uh, one of the character of their policy from historical perspective. Okay, I mentioned it many times.
Okay,
From
okay.
historical perspective, there's an element of ambiguity. The element of ambiguity means that most of the time they normally inconsistent. All right, although sometimes we heard that they promoting, keep promoting, for example, uh, democracy, liberalizations, freedom of speech, etc. This is all the jargons and the rhetorics proclaimed and propagated by them. All right, but
Okay.
there's an element of, well,
Ambiguity.
the easiest term I can say is hypocrisy. All right, that's the easiest term. But official term, most of book or maybe studies, they classify this character as what they call ambiguity. All right, so the case of Saddam Hussein, we knew that Saddam Hussein became the leader of Iraq since 1979. eh? Uh, and we knew as well before that there was revolutions, a coup d'etat, a military coup d'etat in Iraq, and dethroned the monarchy government in 1958, monarchy government King Faisal II, and then all the family members were murdered by militaries and by the armies, and then the armies controlled Iraq until 1979. All right, at that time we have to remember that, as I said, when I link with ambiguity, they don't care. They didn't care either you are absolute monarchy, you are, you are autocratic leaders, you are dictator, you are, in fact, even if you are not really obvious, but if you are communist, quote communist, or inclined to be a part of communist sphere, they don't. This Western power, they don't care. So they are inconsistent, inconsistent, or what we call ambiguity, a policy of ambiguity. So in the case of Saddam Hussein, and my study as well, I studied one of the papers that I've written and studied. It is about the British policy in Libya, and I just uh, examine one of the PhD student from UUM. It was about Libya. It was Libya. So it's almost the same case between what happened in Libya under Muammar Gaddafi and
Yes.
what exactly happened in Iraq. In Iraq under Saddam Hussein. So when the times come, if Saddam Hussein threat become a biggest threat to
To
the
Western.
interest of the Western power, so they don't care. You can see, for example, in one side, you feel like that they are against, for instance, uh, ideology of Shia movement, for example. But in the case of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, they don't care. They don't care. They can replace the Sunni, for example. Saddam Hussein is a Sunni leader. They can replace the Sunni leader with the Shia leader, as long as these leaders, regardless what is your ideology, can benefit and then support the interest of the Western countries. All right. In the case of Saddam Hussein, of course, they tried to find an excuse, and the excuse at that time when Saddam Hussein occupied Kuwait. All right, but we have to remember that Kuwait was established since 1960s, and this Kuwait was a part of the Bastar district under Iraq. So there was a valid and legal basis for Saddam Hussein to claim or to take back this Kuwait. But Kuwait was important after the revolution in Iraq, which I mentioned just now, the throne of the King Faisal II regime, for Britain as well as for European Union or for the United States or in general the Western world. So they don't care. They don't care. So if you want to compare, you can compare this kind of policy, for instance, in the case of Philippines in Southeast Asia. They knew very well. For example, Ferdinand Marcos, he is an autocratic leader, he is a dictator, but when this dictator started to change the attitudes against the West, they are not going to be hesitated uh, to do whatever, even to send a military force to destroy or to expel these leaders. All right, and it's the same case as I compared just now. If you read the modern history of Libya, where they supported the coup d'etat, even though it's not a bloodshed coup d'etat led by Muammar Gaddafi at that time. All right, in one side they say, "Oh, we don't we are not going to support these military leaders or dictator, etc." All right, but when Muammar Gaddafi led the coup d'etat at that time against King Idris, well, the British supported. From the document, the British supported Muammar Gaddafi. All right, but then when suddenly Muammar Gaddafi changed his attitude against Britain and the West, and the British and the American and the European Union, whatever, they started to fight against Muammar Gaddafi in a very cruel way. So I don't know when I presented my paper, especially in UK. When I started to criticize, you are inconsistent when it comes to ambiguity policy, and then they supported me all the document as a proof uh, about their inconsistency. Then they started to they started to get angry, yeah, to get angry. But this is the fact. This is the fact. And all these declassified archival sources, all these documents, uh, uh, you know, uh, are a strong evidence, a strong evidence. Until I remember at the time when I was in Australia, I still remember when they can't argue anymore. I still remember until today it's haunted me. They asked, "Well, Dr. Hasso, where did you get all this document from?" And then they said,
Okay.
"I'm sorry, it's from your backyard." All right. So this is what happened. This one. So I don't believe on this, but even though you don't believe on whatever they proclaim openly, but as a academic, as a scholar, you have to prove it. You have to
Yes.
prove it. Once things have been proven, then they will started to make a silly statement like, where did you get the document from, what do you expect, there's nothing free in this world, blah blah
Mm,
blah. So this is the way it shows that they've got no excuse, and they cannot hide anymore whatever objective uh, I can say malafide or objective in their policy. All right, did I answer your question? Did I
very,
answer?
very
All right.
strong answer. So it's clear my view.
Okay. So you are studying in what subject, in what field?
Oh,
So sorry.
I'm in the field of hadith.
Oh yeah, Hadith. Okay,
The
okay.
hadith.
It is
So
very interesting. Uh,
yes,
uh, yeah,
that's
I
that's
like to.
content history too.
Sorry.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
content history
Because
too. Maghazi
yeah,
and so on.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
something nice to
yeah,
reach on.
yeah. Because histography, the histography, the Muslim histography, it started with School of Medina, and then it was, founded with all these muhaddithin. At the
Yes,
at the beginning, they cannot differentiate which one is hadith, which one is history. But
yes,
eventually, they started to classify into different category of hadith as well as into history. I discussed that previously as well. So we are in the depth of honors to all these hadith scholar and muhaddisin as well from
mm,
historical perspective.
Madrasah Hadis and Madrasah Ra'i. That's
Yeah,
the
in
two
history,
madrasah.
yeah, in history we call it the school of Medina. All
Yes.
right, and the second part since the ninth century, the school of Kufa.
Yeah, school.
School of So they are two different, and their approaches were different. When they analyze history sources, in Medina school, they are more, almost similar with hadith, musalah hadith,
Nas,
uh,
based on Nas.
yeah, approaches. Okay, so any
Okay.
more questions? You
Oh,
know,
so the final question from me, Doctor, is we can compare between Jamal Abdul Nasir and Saddam.
well, yeah. They have kind of similar attitude, right? And not just them, not just them. Many, I can see through historical, analysis for decades, we can find all these, political figures and leaders, like Jamal Abdel Nasser, and then the Saddam Hussein, and then the Muammar Gaddafi. I'm not very sure. Is there any Arabs here? Because I try to avoid from criticize them, but
Arafat from
uh,
Palestine.
yeah, it's almost the
Just say
is
yes,
almost
Arafat.
yeah, for me it's almost the same. I mean, and then from the document, you can, in my case, for example, right, the way how they show solidarity in the public, and then when they go back, when they started to sit with the British officers, they didn't know the British recorded all these conversations, and then after that the British revealed. In fact, they say, well, we have no choice because we are Arab. Then we have to support Palestinian. If we are not Arab, we won't support them. You see? And then when I revealed it, I still remember when I was in Spain, I forgot at the time when the patron, that was during, I can't remember the date, World Middle East Congress in Barcelona twice. And before that was in Jordan, in Amman. I've been warned by the patron. They said in Amman, I remember you can say, you can criticize anything, but not the king, because I criticized King of Jordan in Amman, their policy against Fidayin, and this paper has been published by UKM. The Black September, September. I said, how could the Jordanian government, the way how they treat the Palestinians, especially the Fidayin, and I gave all the figures. Many Fidayin have been killed, not by the Israelis, but by the Jordanian armies. And I forgot that it was in Amman at that time. And then in Barcelona, I still remember when I criticized all these presidents and political leaders of the Middle East, of the Arab countries, the patron of the conference was one of the prince of the Arab, and I remember that he just like, I remember until today he said, "Who is this guy from Malaysia? Why he's busybody talking about us? He better talk about Malaysia." I still remember at that time. Again, to your question, these figures they all are almost the same. They are almost having the same attitude. Right?
But
That's my
uh,
my answer. Right.
okay, thank you, Doctor. I got so many knowledge from you today. Interesting topic about the political because I'm not from the field of politics. So
Uh,
this year into UTM, there's the Prof. Kamaruzaman. It's a figure
yeah,
in geopolitics of
yeah.
Middle
Pro,
East.
yeah, Pro Zaman he's my supervisor when I did my master degree at UKM.
Oh,
And he is my examiner for my PhD doctorate. Uh, so,
okay.
so
He is the
my
prominent
supervisor
figure here.
as well as examiner, and then Prof in UM, Prof Rizwan Osman is retired now. So all these are my mentor and my supervisor as well as examiners for my master degree and my PhD as well. So that's why I do
Okay,
that. Okay.
okay,
So, all right. So are
Okay,
we waiting or what? They're
okay.
not coming.
They're not coming, doctor.
All right.
So
Maybe I
we
can
can
join
we
other
can
room
yes, yes, you can join other room.
as a listener. Okay.
So since we have no presentation yet, so I would like to thanks Dr. Hasrul
Yeah.
Zakaria for your presentation, and
Thank you.
also the participant who joining this session. So see you, doctor, in next session or in next event.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
I wish you all the luck, all the best,
All right.
all the luck.
All right. Thank
Okay,
you,
salam.
moderator, and the
Yes,
rest.
salam. Okay,
Assalamualaikum.
thank you again, doctor. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum from Penang. Bye.
Waalaikumsalam. Stay safe, doctor.